Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre, hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode, we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond, sometimes even from the beyond. You can find us on YouTube at Terror in Tandem, on Instagram at Terror in Tandem, and you can always find our latest and greatest episode on terrorintandem.com.
And if you're real lucky, you might come across one of our stickers in your town.
It happens to be the birthday of podcast bestie, Tracy.
Oh, I knew that.
Happy birthday.
I know I'm acting surprised, but I did know that. Happy birthday, Tracy, beloved listener.
This is dedicated to you, sister.
All of the horrors, blood, guts, and nastiness we'll be discussing today. We want to know. We'll be thinking about you.
It's interesting because she is a parent and we're talking about worst parents. So
total coincidence.
Thinking about you.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Mommy.
So you dropped it. I'm picking it up. Today, we're talking about the worst parents in horror.
The terriblest.
Just awful, awful parents. And not restricting to what you might think, like parents that murder. We're just talking bad parents. Sometimes the parents we talk about aren't evil. They don't kill anybody. They're just real shitty moms and dads.
Yeah.
Or dads and dads or moms and moms. Parental units.
Apathy is bad too.
They're bad. But we're not, parent haters here. We, at least one of us has biological parents. The other one was raised from fungus in a swamp, an unholy sallow ground.
You have worm parents.
I do have worm parents. So, conqueror worm parents. We are going to balance this out eventually with a heroic parents of horror. Those moms and dads that really go through the ringer to save their kids, or the ones you can count on.
Or even step-parents.
Yeah.
Although we're not talking about Terry O'Quinn today.
He'll be mentioned, but...
He will? You're mentioning him?
Of course. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but shit. It's a horrible parents episode.
Wanted to go.
Just letting you know, we'll balance it out, but that is not what today is. Today is a...
Worst parents of horror.
Celebration of some truly shit parents.
I would say admonishment of.
Oh, no. I'm... no notes from me, honestly. I hats off to these paragons of family units.
So, what is your first, imprinted memory of a bad parent in horror that we're not going to talk about today?
So, I don't know if it's quantified as a horror movie necessarily, although it is horrific. It's Faye Dunaway as Joan Collins in Mommy Dearest, which my mom made me watch when I was 8. And it was terrifying.
My mom hates when my brother and I watch that movie.
I honestly, this is not fair because I've not met her, but if I met Faye Dunaway in person, I would be afraid of her.
I think
because
she's
of that
earned
role.
that a little bit from some of her.
I'm sure. She seems like a pretty intense lady. Yeah. But
I would say.
It was Mommy Dearest. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, don't tell, this is not a horror movie, but Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Oh, man.
Her mom, that mother leaves for months.
Yeah. I mean, they do the dishes with a shotgun.
And she leaves her kids alone with a stranger.
Who
for
dies.
Months.
Yeah. She dies.
So, also Mr. Mom, of course, but that's a good example. And we'll probably talk about the good parents when we get there. But,
yeah.
Those are sort of some of the pop culture parents that come to my mind.
Early,
Don't
yeah.
Definitely. Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. And then all of the parents that we're going to talk about today.
For sure.
Because mine start pretty early in my youth.
In your development into the darkness.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's have it.
I'm going to start with
Why don't you give birth
book
to your
and a
first
movie.
recommendation?
I'm going to talk about both. I read the book and then saw the movie
Ooh, I know where
10
this,
years later.
I know where this is going.
Flowers in the Attic. So listen, I'm not going to get into an argument about whether this is classified as horror or not.
It's always in the like thriller or horror
it's
section
dark
of the book, of the bookstore.
F.
Yeah, no
so
kidding. Literally. There is a lot of dark F in that.
So it's a V.C. Andrews novel from 1979. The plot itself is deranged. Kathy and Chris Dollenganger, and their little brother and sister Corey and Carrie, so 4 C's, Dollenganger.
Yeah.
They're all like blonde, beautiful, adorable kids. Their father dies. Now, their father was disavowed because Corinne, the mom,
Another
in this tale, married Christopher, who we learn is a much younger half brother, meaning Corinne married her half uncle.
Huh.
So
complicated.
The grandfather, her father, Corinne's father, so Chris and Kathy, they're the oldest twins. They're not twins. The young kids are twins. Kathy and Chris are like a year apart. They're teenagers. Grandfather disowned them. Grandmother is authoritarian religious zealot. And she basically doesn't stand for any children behavior. So their mother, they cast her out. She had 4 kids with her half uncle, who now has passed away. And this genius mother, this wonderful, loving mother, Corinne, in sarcasm, she is destitute and she wants to regain the fortune that she was disavowed from by bringing her kids to her parents' house where her father is ailing. And she asks her kids to just hide away in the attic for a couple of days so she can ingratiate herself into her mother's goodwill.
So
because
far,
her mother has
all
never
of this
shown her goodwill.
Sounds completely normal to me.
What happens, though, is the kids all end up trapped in the attic for 3 years.
Oops.
Where poison donuts kills one of them.
Yeah.
Corey. And they hear, like a lot going on. Chris and Kathy end up having sex, although it's sort of a rape. And these incestuous siblings start to have like a romantic parental role that they play with the younger twins, so much so that the younger twin Carrie refers to Kathy as mom a lot of the times.
It gets real Game of Thrones.
The grandmother is the real sociopath. She wants nothing to do with the children because she believes they're the personification of her daughter's sin. And Chris, especially, is the father's namesake, looks just like him. It happened around the same time of age. And then the incest continues. The cycle continues.
It's the problem with incest, It's like Pringles.
Corinne comes in from time to time and promises the kids, oh, don't worry, it'll be soon. Pretty soon you'll be free and wealthy. Meanwhile, she's being set up with rich men to date. And she's going out on the town dating. And she also is like promising them wealth rather than giving them love. They just all want to be together, not trapped in an attic, having sex with each other.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
What's really interesting, though, is that this was made into... Oh, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So V.C. Andrews sold over 40 million copies. This came out in 1979, so over 40 years ago. There have been 2 film adaptations.
Yeah, our parents' generation was really into that book.
I read it. I loved it.
Oh, I know you did.
it had 2 film adaptations, one in 1987, which I'm going to talk about that adaptation, and one in 2014, which I'm not.
Oh, I didn't even know about that one.
Kiernan Shipka, I believe, plays
okay.
Kathy.
Sabrina.
And a stage play.
Oh, God.
I know. As well as many sequels, prequels, and retellings penned by both Andrews and Andrew Niederman, a ghostwriter who took on Andrews' mantle after her death.
In the Flowerverse. Yeah.
Flowers in the Attic, the book, inspired the band name for Amanda Palmer's band, the Dresden Dolls.
No shit.
And Gillian Flynn has said that the mother and grandmother characters started her addiction to wicked women.
Is incredibly unsurprising. Yeah. That tracks.
So in the 1987 film, which I think was like an ABC.
That is the one I do remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was made for TV and
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Victoria Tennant plays Corinne Dollanganger, but the grandmother, Olivia Foxworth, is played by Louise Fletcher. Louise Fletcher with the tightest bun,
Nurse
and
Ratched
perfect,
herself.
like high neck collared outfits that you've ever seen.
Nobody played a
love
scary,
given.
authoritative woman
man.
like Louise Fletcher.
And basically, we see how not to be a successful parents. You know, all the secrets that hide in like a rich aristocratic family. The rule is really don't have kids with your uncle because you're not going to get any money.
Don't Jon Snow your way into the inheritance.
Honestly, so both the grandmother, Olivia, the grandmother, is terrible because of disavowing her only daughter and not wanting anything to do with kids. You know, she was of the mind of kids should never be seen nor heard.
A real Milford man.
And then Corinne really wanting the kids. I don't know what she wanted. She just wanted the money.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't care about those kids.
No.
Because no mother that would care about her children would send them back to a situation that she was then cast out of because of how terrible her upbringing was.
Yeah, I'm going to give him an F in parenting here.
Yeah. So the
for
children
fucking each other.
All of the children are a product of incest, and the grandmother knows it. And Corinne knowingly brought them back into the home to get money, just waiting for the grandfather to die, which he does. And then the only object that Olivia wants is to have those kids killed, which happens, the poisoned donuts, and she's starting to like deprive them of food and starve them and, you know, Munchausening, but not for the pleasure of it.
It is one of my favorite.
Not for the pleasure of
not for
Munchausen.
how much we all enjoy Munchausen by proxy. It's my favorite documentary about the British royal family for sure. Good choice.
T's and P's.
Yeah. Hard to top those bad parents.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give it a shot, and I'm going bonkers right out the gate here with 2 of my favorite bad parents. And I'm, of course, talking about Mommy and Daddy from 1991's The People Under the Stairs, directed by
They
Master
don't even get real names.
Wes Craven. No, they do. They have real names, but who cares, because they really go by Mommy and Daddy. Now,
sometimes isn't it really disturbing when a mother figure or a father figure are so awful, yet they're still called Mommy and Daddy?
Yes. Or when someone in real life that you've known for an incredibly long time says, call me mother, and you're like, no, I won't. So yeah, obviously, whenever you hear someone call, like, especially a grown person calling their parents mommy or daddy, it is a huge red flag. But now
I can't. I do call my parents mommy and daddy sometimes.
Cool. I'm definitely going to be watching you. So they are memorably played by legendary,
but only to be cutesy,
Everett McGill and Wendy Roby. Everett McGill, probably best known for playing Big Ed in Twin Peaks. Anyway, he is all in on this motherfucker. Now, Mommy and Daddy are basically, and Wes Craven's been pretty open about this, they're essentially roided up versions of Nancy and Ronald Reagan. They're super right-wing, patriotic, all-Americans who, of course, love guns, they love Jesus, and they love to kidnap children, keep them in the walls of their house in the effort to create a perfect family. But what they really create are mutants. So Mommy and Daddy win on a number of levels here. For one, and first and foremost, they go by Mommy and Daddy. But Daddy likes to chase after the in-the-walls children, dressed in a full-body leather gimp suit, wielding a shotgun.
Yikes.
So, yeah, that's... Listen, this movie is best watched as a parody and satire because it was meant to be. It has a young Ving Rhames in it, but the number one absolute draw of this are Everett McGill and Wendy Roby because they go bananas. Now, on the outside, they're the perfect late 80s, early 90s suburban conservative family, you know, well-dressed, well-spoken, pillars of the community. And
they go to church?
Oh, of course. Now, behind closed doors, they're
behind closed walls.
Freaks and perverts of the highest order. Now, Mommy and Daddy, you are two of the worst parents in horror because of everything I just mentioned, but your one actual real child you keep locked away well into her adulthood. I don't quite remember. I think they sort of lure them in.
Trick-or-treating,
yeah, they just kind of kidnap them, and they've grown up there, so they're all like weird and, you know, pale. They've never seen the sun. They don't speak English, and
are there like
they're
missing
cannibals.
kid flyers or milk cartons or anything?
Oh, you're really holding my feet to the flame. I did
sorry.
not rewatch this
Just never
movie for
saw
this
the movie.
episode, so no, I haven't seen this in a little while. But there are, if I am not mistaken, many references to missing children.
Okay,
yeah,
great, gotcha.
So,
I'm all caught up now.
Yeah. Now, listen, no one's perfect. And raising a child is hard. But if you find yourself overcome by the stresses of your job and your life to the point that you are running through the house in a full-body leather suit, blowing holes in the walls with a shotgun, chasing the mutant children you yourself have kidnapped, consider adoption.
Or if you feel like
as in giving your kids up
being
for adoption.
A parent is, you know, too stressful for you, maybe don't kidnap other kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely don't vote for Reagan. That guy, he's just not all there. So that is People Under the Stairs. Mommy and Daddy, horrible, horrible parents. Terrible job, you two. Terrible job.
All right. Well, speaking of bad dad, I'm going to go in with another gem of a book/movie with Jack Torrance in The Shining.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
So he is one of the
Not
all-time worst dads in horror movie history, in both book and film version.
He's not completely unsympathetic, but he is a shit father.
I will argue that you are incorrect.
I would say that Jack Torrance himself is also a victim of the Overlook Hotel. But
Great. I'm glad you said that because I will give you a counter
okay.
to what actually occurred. So it's bad enough that he decides to relocate his wife and child to a remote hotel with no human contact for an entire winter in the middle of Colorado. But he already knew of the hotel's troubled history. It's covered in the job interview. And he learns that the previous caretaker wiped out his entire family as a result of him relocating his family to this hotel to be a caretaker for the entire winter. He's previously fired from his very prestigious job as an English professor, which leaves his family in financial trouble, which brings him to this job.
Well,
and
he's fired also because he's a drunk.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he begins to drink more and plans to write a novel and accepts this job and relocates his family. Not for his family interests, but for his own selfish, I am the breadwinner. I will make the bread the way that I want to do it that benefits me the most. Not considering his children, his child, or his wife, whom he hates. He hates his wife. That is so clear
For
in
sure.
so many ways.
Yeah. Even before he becomes possessed, he's like resentful and bitter towards her.
Yeah. Throughout the entirety of The Shining, he is repeatedly drunk, selfish, and a bad husband and a terrible father. He has a conversation with the former caretaker in the Gold Room, and he admits to dislocating Danny's shoulder because he was in a fit of rage, and then mocked his attempt at sobriety with a toast to his attempt of sobriety. Like, he doesn't take it seriously. And so before they even got to the hotel, he was abusive to both Wendy and to Danny. As I mentioned, the dislocation. And he takes it out on Wendy all of the time, saying, you'll never let me forget. She's never going to let me forget this one thing. And that's his own self-hatred and guilt talking. It is not, it's not the hotel.
No, it's classic abuser rhetoric. And what I meant earlier when I said he's not a wholly unsympathetic character, it was not in any way meant to condone his demonstrably heinous acts against his family and his shitty, selfish personality. What I meant by that is he is perfect fodder for the Overlook because of his weakness and his demons. And despite what one might do in life, I'm not sure being possessed and then having your soul be eternally damned and become part of this evil hotel that collects souls, if that's like a proportionate punishment for just being a piece of shit.
No, and I agree with you there. I'm not saying that the punishment was, befitting.
Yeah, that's all I meant. That's all I know. He's a horrible father before the Overlook, and he only gets worse.
And I think that's why the Overlook called to him, and he took the job and got the job. And even, it's sort of like the possession is calling him because of how damaged and a bad person he is in general. But we're just talking about his parenting.
And his parenting, the damage does extend throughout Danny's life because that's explored in Dr. Sleep, the trauma, inflicted on him.
And he's not a father. He does not,
He's a recovering alcoholic by the time we pick up with him in Dr. Sleep. He's never had children. He's never had a long-term serious relationship. He never
can't
even
have
really
a normal life.
He's kind of a drifter. He moves
can't
from
stop
town to
having
town.
nightmares.
Yeah.
He can't stop reliving this choice that his father made for the betterment of their family.
Yeah.
Again, it's all wrapped up in his alcoholism, but some theories I read recently of the interpretation of The Shining is that the Overlook isn't haunted at all, and that it's his alcoholic-induced hallucinations.
Oh, absolutely.
That are actually what's happening here.
That's definitely one way to look at it. I mean, the way that his wife and child are terrified of him, it's similar to, how you would feel against any violent person.
But we've watched some possession movies of where the person who wants to protect their child fights against the possession. In this case, though, I don't think it's in his nature to want to protect his child. So that is why I think that Jack Torrance is one of the worst parents in horror.
Let's all raise a glass, everyone, to Jack Torrance. Jack, you were shit father when you were a regular guy, and being possessed by the murderous demons of an evil hotel didn't make you better.
Didn't bring the best out in you.
No.
And guess what? You left your family destitute after all.
You sure did. Yeah. If you have read and watched Dr. Sleep, and I highly recommend you do both, you'll find out that Wendy and Danny, as you might expect, didn't have a happy life after escaping from the murderous attempt. And in the book, the Overlook explodes. In the movie, he just freezes to death outside.
Yep.
So,
it's sort of like which fate is worse.
Yeah. Gosh, this reminds me of that one vacation. It was just the worst Christmas ever. So why don't we take a little break and then we'll get back to bashing parental figures.
Cool beans. I got to just call my parents real quick.
Okay.
Curious how to stock your shed with the tools that get the job of hunting, chasing, and terrorizing done? Do you dream of hacking out those pesky camp counselors at the lake? Do you have an unrelenting passion for revenge? Well, when your old standard kitchen knives and carving tools won't do, it's time to head down to Uncle Jason's Knives and Blades. Never sharpened, but always sharp, Uncle Jason's specialty killing tools will slice through all of those in your path without effort or exhaustion. You can choose from a variety of tools, rusted and weighted for your specifications. Intimidate onlookers, trespassers, and unsuspecting travelers alike with our custom tool display boards. Whether in your basement or shed, our discreet teams will come in and transform your space into its terrifyingly best. Head over to County Route 24, turn left at the no trespassing sign, and head into the barn and talk to one of our specialists. At Uncle Jason's Knives and Blades, we will fulfill our promise of only the most sinister and menacing knives and blades around. So come on down. This is a fake ad for a fake product and a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone or endorse killing people with fancy custom weapons you made in your shed.
Well, Laura is off the phone, and I am back from the summoning circle where I used to contact dear old wretched dad. So
I told you he was parenting by worms. They're worms, Michael.
They're worms, Michael. You're eating worms. Anyway, enough about our parents. Let's talk about the awful, terrible parents.
Lines are open now. Call in if you have a terrible parent story.
Oh my God, they're exploding. All of our phone lines instantly went down. Overwhelmed. So my next one, oh boy, I'm going back to the olden times, and I'm going to be taking you on a journey to colonial America when nothing bad ever happened.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Oh, yeah, you do. I'm talking about the atrocious parenting of William and Catherine from the superlative movie The Witch, directed by Robert Eggers in 2015. Now, this is played memorably by two fantastic British actors, Ralph Ineson and Kate Dickie. Ralph Ineson has been in The Lord of Misrule, The Creator, and like a million things. Kate Dickie you probably remember mostly from Game of Thrones or Loki.
She's so
awesome.
Well cast as a terrible mother.
Kate Dickie is like Amanda Plummer. She has a look, she has a severe look to her. And she, I think, gets cast in roles that play to that.
Yes.
But separate from that, she is a phenomenal actor. And in this,
we first get introduced in this film, which I'll always be grateful for, to our beloved Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yes. Now, William and Catherine, here's what makes them such special parents. Now, this takes place in, like I said, old colonial times. So if we think about who came here to found America, which was totally empty and untaken and unlived in, were Puritans. Now, Puritans left Europe because they were such religious fanatics that
Europe kicked them out.
The fanatically religious Calvinists of Europe said, even you are too much for us. So the Puritans came to America to see if they could spread their joy here.
Spread the word.
Now we begin The Witch watching William and Catherine and their family being kicked out of their community of fanatical Puritans for being
too fanatical
and too puritanical. They are so religious, they were kicked out of the crazy religious community that was kicked out of its own country for being too crazy. So that's several levels of we love Jesus. So they do what any good parent would do and take their children into the wilderness to live separate from the community, basically a death sentence. And as time goes by, they also kind of figure out that right next door to them in the woods is a witch. Also, their goat might be the devil.
It's kind of a coven.
Yeah.
It's a coven.
It is.
I mean, you could say that they parent the goat as well.
Now,
or does the goat parent them?
The thing is, oh God, Black Phillip, love you so much, Dad. Now, that's how they start. Now, William and Catherine confront every oddity and every strange thing by either denying flat out that it's happening at all.
That old classic.
What parent does that? They ignore it, or they, blame it all on their oldest daughter and try to murder her. So it doesn't end great for them. William gets gored to death by Black Phillip, the aforementioned goat, and his last words are a quote from the book of Job, "Corruption, thou art my father." Man, honestly, William, if you did one good thing in this life, you went out like a boss. And the last we see of Catherine is in some sort of weird witch trance getting her boob eaten by a crow.
Yeah,
so that
she does really like to take that boob out and feed the baby.
In Game of Thrones, too.
Yeah,
that might be in her rider. Much like Jeff Goldblum must always play the keyboard in his films.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Kate Dickey's like, I have to show
I have to nurse a way too old child.
I won't show
I have to be
both
weaning,
boobs, one boob only.
Toddlers and up.
It's called the single boob clause, also known as mono boobs. So, wow. Anyway, William and Catherine, basically, they're confronted, admittedly, by some pretty strange things that any parent might struggle with, but at every opportunity, they are abusive, mean, horrible, violent, and religious.
And their kids just try. Well,
hard.
The one's a baby-ish, and
yep. And then there are twins, the two small twins, and then there's Thomasin, played by Anya Taylor-Joy.
She just tries to do everything so perfectly.
And by the end, when she is entering the woods to join the coven, you really have to wonder, well, what the fuck else was she going to do?
Yeah.
You watch this whole movie of her getting pushed and pushed and pushed towards this and away from the family unit by the family unit.
And they were like, come, we'll accept you.
Yeah.
You don't have to change.
Honestly, even if I was kind of happy if I got that invitation, I'd be like, yeah,
free.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go float up in the sky covered in boob blood.
It's like Rumspringer or Spring Break,
yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Thomasin has grown up under the thumb of these violent, fanatical parents, and then she is offered, wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Yeah.
And she would.
Yeah,
she would. Anyway, William and Catherine from the Witch, they are bad. They're bad parents.
Bad parents.
Shouldn't
Not a bad
have kids.
seed.
You shouldn't have kids,
parents.
and you shouldn't have had 4 of them.
Yeah. Well, they don't all make it.
Yeah.
So.
How about you? How about you there, ideal daughter?
Yeah, I really am.
I know. Cherub.
Good night, Mommy.
Oh, yeah.
2014.
Now, listen, if you got a thing about your mom wearing crazy bandages all over her face,
I'm a monster.
have we got a movie for you? Like that fake movie from Arrested Development.
Yeah, Gangy.
And Gangy 2.
Right.
Don't forget Gangy 2.
Where are my pills? Anyway, I have to sort of talk about this obscurely because some co-hosts haven't seen this film.
And some co-hosts were very upset, shocked, and hurt when they were left out of the viewing party.
Even though some co-hosts knew that this episode had been planned
even
for
though
many months.
Some other co-hosts
So anyway, Goodnight Mommy from 2014, written and directed by the writing-directing team Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala.
Directing duo.
They also did The Lodge and recently The Devil's Bath, which came out in February in Germany because they are German language films.
Yes.
From Austria.
Yes.
So this film is starring Lucas and Elias Schwartz, also called Lucas and Elias in the movies, keeping it simple.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Suzanne Wist, who plays Mutter, played by, yeah, I said that already.
You did.
Sorry. So
But I believe in the movie, she doesn't really have a name, does she?
Mutter.
Yeah, Mutter.
Yeah, Mutter,
Yeah.
mother, mommy. So the actress lived alone for 3 months to prepare for this role.
No kidding.
Often completely swaddling herself in bandages, and she kept 2 pet cockroaches. Now, cockroaches play a major role in this film.
And
Madagascar hissing cockroaches, to be exact.
Laura, beloved co-host, how do you personally feel about cockroaches?
I despise them. I
You
hate
do?
them so much.
Oh,
But I
my
feel
goodness.
like I've been really giving into all of my fears for this podcast.
You have
for the
been-
fans. I've been really going into it, you all.
Fam,
I did fast forward through some of the big. There's some, like I said, cockroaches play a major role in this film. So I did hit the little advance button a little bit.
That's fine. Understand that we are always...
I'm not into cockroach play.
Which has honestly been one of the biggest points of contention in our relationship. But we are going to cockroach therapy for that. So anyway...
That really threw you off.
It did. Now I'm just thinking,
Cockroach play?
of a special move called La Cucaracha, which I can't describe on this podcast.
Well, what is this film about? Is what you meant?
That is,
so
mommy.
in this, there's this house in this beautiful countryside. There's open woods and cornfields, and the 2 9-year-old twin brothers, Elias and
Lucas.
are roaming free. And they're waiting for their mother to come home. And she comes home and she's bandaged up after a pretty extensive cosmetic process.
Yeah, like her whole face is covered Invisible Man style.
Yeah. And they start to suspect because she's acting very differently. She won't address one of the children at all. She will only talk to one of the twins. Because she's still mad at the other one. So she gives a drink to, one kid says, can Lucas have some? And she's like, well, he needs to apologize. So it's a very splitting. It's a mother who splits the relationship.
Ooh, what's that like?
The mother at one point locks one of the boys in the bedroom and holds him down, with a pillow over his head and makes him repeat that I am your mother, and promises her that he will no longer have a relationship with his brother. So it's a very divisive relationship that this mother, who they aren't sure is even their mother, they find this picture in a photo album of their mother and another woman that looks like her twin.
Ooh.
And so the children start to doubt this. They have this struggle with trust, obviously, and they start to work together. The plot, according to the writers, is very similar to Capgras syndrome, which is imposter syndrome. And people who experience this syndrome have an irrational belief that someone they know or recognize has been replaced by an imposter. So there's a pervasive sense that throughout the entire film, there is something wrong with this mother. There's something very, very wrong with her. The way she's behaving and acting towards them. And the boys have an increasingly dysfunctional relationship with her. They eventually try to torment the truth out of her, being where is their mother.
That is my... Listen, whenever I want to get the truth out of anybody, I start with torment.
And this film borrows the basis and situations from the American film The Other from 1972 with a screenplay written by Thomas Tryon.
Awesome. Harvest Home, yo. Long-time listeners.
He's also the author of the original novel, The Other.
Nice. Yeah.
And the plot elements of that are two twins are found in horrifying situations. I won't give away the rest because there is a major twist in this film.
Well, Goodnight Mommy was itself remade in America in 2022 with Naomi Watts as Bandage Mommy. And from all accounts, I would recommend sticking with the original.
Maybe we'll do a make-remake when some co-host gets around to watching Goodnight Mommy 2014. But
listen, my time is valuable. No, it isn't.
Why I'm bringing this up is when you get to the end of the film, I would like you all to light up the phone lines and tell us whether or not you think this is a bad mom or not.
Operators are standing by waiting for you.
Regardless of if she was the real mother or an imposter mother, her behavior towards these kids, what was that all about?
I don't know. I mean, based on the pillow I'm your mommy story, I'm already starting to form an opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of things can be true all at once.
Nice.
And one other thing I'll say is the Red Cross in Austria just fucking walks in your house and just wanders around and sits there.
Wow. What's going on, Red Cross in Austria?
They really need that money.
The Gates. Well, I look forward to watching that alone by myself without telling anybody.
Can you please do it soon so we can talk about it?
I will.
What's your next one?
My third and final, although I will mention that
my last summary.
Yeah, we're doing a little special something.
Rapid fire.
Yeah, we'll get to it. My last
we'll get to it.
My last examination of
phone lines are now closed.
Classic parenting is it's also another recent example, and boy oh boy do these two really, really kill it. I am, of course, talking about Annie and Steve, the poster boomers for narcissistic parenting of Ari Aster's 2018 classic Hereditary. One of not only my favorite horror movies, but legit one of my favorite movies.
Boy,
full stop.
That sure is a pain in my neck.
Well done. I did rewatch parts of this. I've seen it a few times, but for this episode, I watched the trailer, and then that got me really jazzed, so I just watched most of the movie again. And
it's called Jizz.
Boo! That happened a few times too.
Ew!
So I am
sorry, everyone. Sorry, Tracy. We know we dedicated this episode to you.
Yeah, it's me. I'm the problem. So
yes, it is, Taylor.
I'm talking about Toni Collette and Gabriel Byrne from Hereditary. Now, what sets these folks apart, and they are terrible in different ways.
Yeah, the apathy.
Now, Toni Collette, obviously, first off, gonna say it. I've said it before. I will always say it. Should have won an Academy Award for this. She is one of the greatest actors of our time, and this was her greatest performance, in my opinion. She was masterful. Much like Ellen Burstyn should have won an Academy Award for The Exorcist and Requiem for a Dream, but we live in an imperfect world. Anyway, Toni Collette plays
for Shakespeare in Love, so
oh great. Well, I'm happy.
It's all about goop.
You know, legit, that was the last year I ever watched the full Oscars. I was like, fuck this shit. I can't. Anyway, so talking about
phone lines are lighting up.
Annie and Steve. Now, let's start with Annie. Annie, in her defense, was raised by a cult leader who spent her life trying to shove the spirit of an archdemon of hell into the body of her children, causing one of them to kill himself and the other one to grow up to be a horrible parent.
Yeah.
So
but
that
she decided
caveat,
to have
that asterisk,
of her own.
yeah, she has her own kids, and Anyway, she starts.
What kids they are.
We start the film with her eulogizing her mother, giving one of the all-time great eulogies, which is essentially, I hated my mother. She was terrible. I don't know why you're all here. And I got to say, Annie, that was the only time in the movie I really saw you. So, Annie's issue... Well, you know what? Let's touch on the big things first. She gets one of her children killed. She invites an evil spirit into her home by performing an irresponsible seance that she forces her family to do, even though they desperately do not want to do it. She burns her husband alive, kind of by accident, but also, again, doing something that...
At first it's an accident, and then she starts to really embrace it.
Well, no, she's possessed shortly after that.
I know.
So she burns her husband to death, doing something that she also shouldn't do against his wishes. Basically, Annie just does what she's going to do, and consequences be damned. And as a result, everybody she's ever loved, including herself, ends up dead. And her only living child left gets his soul ripped out and replaced with that of a arch-king of hell. Mm-hmm. So
the cycle continues.
Now,
and this, I think, is a real good commentary because we haven't talked too much about the parenting cycle of abuse.
Yes. Now,
this is a good representation of cyclical
Toni Collette
behavior.
In this film does a wonderful job of playing a narcissistic mother, clearly displaying signs of borderline personality disorder. She puts all of her issues on her children. Everything is about her. She's the protagonist of everything and the victim of everything. The design of the universe is one that is geared towards making her suffer, and that is everyone else's fault. And Toni Collette plays this beautifully. There's awkward scene after awkward scene of her just psychologically bashing her children into smithereens. And when one of them dies tragically, she just loses her shit completely and kind of forgets that the other one exists.
On her other child, too.
Oh, yes. Says some things that, boy, you just never, ever should say to anyone let alone your own child.
Yeah.
So she's terrible. And where poor old Gabriel Byrne comes in here as Steve is, he's useless. He's just a fuddy-duddy,
apathetic,
flaccid,
always trying to
limp.
make everybody calm down.
He's the peacekeeper. I don't want any conflicts. So instead of recognizing that he's married to a psychopath that is torturing everyone around her, he's just trying to keep the peace. And I think we've all met that person, the apologist for abusers, who just don't want to rock the boat, and they make it the fault of the person being abused.
And he doesn't help at all when Peter feels responsible for his sister's death.
Listen,
he doesn't comfort. There's nothing there for him to do.
I'm not an alpha type bro. I'm not really that kind of person. But for fuck's sake, Steve, man up. You have got to stand up to your wife. She is
He's
torturing.
a psychiatrist.
Yes. She's torturing his children, berating them, and he's just sort of like trying to calm her down.
Diffuse.
Yes.
She can't be diffused.
Exactly. And, I don't mean to be super judgmental towards him because he does have a pretty bad end. And he is also a victim of Annie's domineering personality. But listen, you're a dad. You're responsible for these kids.
Yeah, your job is to protect the kids too.
At the end of the day, one of them's dead and the other one's possessed. So I'm going to have to give you a 0. Yeah. Annie and Steve are, in my opinion, the worst kind of parents because they are not out necessarily to hurt their children. They just can't seem to help themselves. They are such horrible, self-centered, clueless fucks that just by doing what they do, they destroy their children. If I set out to dismantle my loved ones purposefully, I could not have done a better job than Annie and Steve did by accident. So here's to you, Annie and Steve. It all worked out, didn't it? Oh, no, it didn't. it really, really didn't.
So what we want to do is a little like rapid run through of a collection of parenting from the 80s horror slasher films.
Since we are of a particular age,
Yeah.
this is a love letter to the what we're calling the Boomer Doomer lightning round of the very particular parenting styles we are oh so familiar with of the late 70s and the 80s. It comes through so beautifully in some of the films we're going to be mentioning.
I want to start with the pinnacle is A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Absolutely. Why not start with the fucking best of it?
So the parents are useless throughout the entire film. All of the parents.
Awful.
Every single one. Because
In the whole
first
fucking
off,
town.
Freddy Krueger is the result of their thoughtless actions when they were teenagers.
Their vigilante justice created this monster that is now killing all their children. And while that's happening, they're lying to their children about what's killing them instead of saying, hey, we actually know what this is, and let's all prepare and fight it.
Well, for those of you that might not remember, 15 years before we get to Nightmare on Elm Street, Krueger was a sadistic predator who avoided conviction on a technicality, and the parents of Elm Street took it into their own hands and sent him ablaze in the boiler room. And so, you know, if you were a really good parent, would you raise your kids in that town?
Christian white suburbia, honestly.
No, they stay in the town and they raise all their kids there. And then when Freddy returns for vengeance, they're like, I don't know, I'm just going to drink. Marge Thompson,
mom of the
just drinks
century.
her problems away in negligees.
Oh, not only that. Yeah. Oh, first off, she's always in a negligee. She's always drinking. And in her best moment, after her daughter has been desperately trying to tell her that the man she murdered is trying to kill her in a dream.
Let's take you to a sleep clinic, honey.
Yeah, she witnesses all the shit at the sleep clinic. She sees her take a hat out of thin air and still drugs her daughter to make her fall asleep. Now, okay, let's take out the fact that you are sending her into the dream place where you know Freddy can get her. Don't drug your kids, folks.
And Glenn's parents...
Ideally, don't drug anyone.
The only thing Glenn's parents care about is that Nancy and Glenn aren't going to have premarital sex.
Oh, Glenn's parents... Glenn's dad, especially, is the fucking worst.
And Nancy...
And, you know,
is like,
poor
oh,
Glenn.
Guess what? My dad is the town sheriff.
Yeah. Old
He'll
John
protect
Saxon.
us. He gaslights her and gaslights her.
And he better than anyone knows what's going on.
He gaslights her worse than Freddy got gaslit.
No, seriously, it's very it is difficult to watch as an adult, these kids screaming the truth at their parents who know that they're correct, and their parents are just so desperate to keep up the facade of a perfect, 2.5 children picket fence house lifestyle that they're fucking denying reality as it happens to them. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Denying reality as weird. Not like a certain generation would be famous for that. So here's to you, Thompsons, you bastards.
And Glenn's.
And you know what? The whole fucking town.
What's Glenn's last name?
Who cares? Bloodbed. Glenn Bloodbed.
It's Glenn. It's Tom.
Who's next?
Margaret White.
Well, I would hope she's on that list.
I mean, we're going to say 80s because of the film, because I am going to be talking about Piper Laurie as Margaret White. She created the phrase
peace,
dirty
Queen.
Pillows
to
live in our vernacular forever.
And they're all going to laugh at you.
Also scared the shit out of us.
So scary. So I want to see a grudge match between Faye Dunaway, Mommy Dearest, and Piper Laurie.
What about, what's her name from The Witch? I mean, these religious zealot moms.
Or Marcia Gay Harden in The Mist. Yeah, love it. So scary.
She wanted to cleanse her daughter. She wanted
kept her locked in the closet.
Make sure that her daughter was not being sent to hell for her sins, so she would force prayer and repentance on her. She kept her hidden away. She beat her for having normal bodily functions.
Oh, yeah. This is a mom who is so good that in the 70s, her own daughter, when she has her first period, thinks she's bleeding to death.
Yeah. And she, doesn't trust anything. And the only way Carrie can get away from her mother's terrible reign is to
use her mind to throw knives at her. Oh, yeah. Listen, if you can use your mind to throw knives at your abuser, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. So, yeah, that she did give us We're All Gonna Laugh at You.
Yeah,
and
did.
Dirty Pillow. So it's not all bad. But in terms of mom skills, your daughter did go on to murder.
Came to you very honestly and said,
yeah.
I mean, she called her mama, which, again, that's another one that's a little like, mama.
When someone of past a certain age is still speaking that way,
yeah.
Absolutely.
All the Halloween films.
Where are the parents? Where are they?
Laurie Strode is the babysitter extraordinaire. If we
in the movie,
were to
she's
say
like 17 years old.
Babysitters in horror movies, she would be hit. But where are the parents? Where are any
parents in
all
Haddonfield?
The kids are out trick or treating. Where are the parents?
It's amazing.
Where is Michael Myers' parents?
I don't.
Nobody knows how Michael Myers.
Is there like a town meeting? Because the only time you ever see any parents is in like the remakes.
The only time you see any adults is cops.
Yeah.
Are cops.
Yeah. That is a good one. I'm going to jump from that to another 80s. That was 70s, excuse me. I'm going to jump into the 80s with mom and dad, especially Julia from Hellraiser.
Yeah. Oh, Julia.
Listen,
You're
Julia,
so bad.
You are the stepmom.
Stepmom.
You lured men in so that your lover, who is also the brother of your current husband, can suck out their blood and come back from hell. And then you try to feed your family to demons. You're bad. You're a bad mom. Also, you're mean. Like, while you're doing all that stuff, you're super nasty about it. At least you could do is like
you're nasty to your stepdaughter.
Yeah, you're like super mean and you're feeding people to demons.
What do you care? Your father is fine. He's happy.
Ugh, the worst.
What about Pamela Voorhees?
Pamela Voorhees is the perfect example of that fucking parent who is a terrible parent but overcompensates.
Yeah.
Because, hey, Pam, you were a negligent parent and your kid died not because of teenagers, but because you weren't keeping a fucking eye on your kid.
Yeah, so played by Betsy Palmer.
Instead of taking any responsibility for it, you murder people.
She takes a job at Camp Crystal Lake. Her son is tormented by the other kids because he's deformed. She continues to work there and then decides to kill all of the teenagers, all the camp counselors.
Yeah.
Even though her son's death had nothing to do with their bullying.
Now, what I ask you is more indicative of the classic parenting of that time period than ignoring your own faults to the degree that you just straight up become a serial murderer instead of looking in the mirror.
Yes.
Pamela Voorhees, you are the poster child for 70s and 80s parenting.
Neglect.
You got what was coming to you. My head's off to you. Actually, yours is off to me.
Yes.
Any more parents from this time period that we want to rake over the coals? I mean, obviously Terry O'Quinn is the stepfather, but that's an obvious one. Well,
a Lifetime thriller.
He killed.
Yeah.
I would say he was bad for that.
I feel like Penn Badgley might have been in a remake of that film, or was
maybe
he in that movie.
I think the guy who played the dad was that guy from Nip Tuck, Dylan Walsh.
Yeah, and Penn Badgley was in it.
Yeah, he was one of the kids.
And guess who the stepdaughter was?
Who was that?
Amber Heard.
Oh, totally normal Amber Heard. Cool. Anyway, speaking of pooping in people's beds. What is it with Johnny Depp in beds? He has bad luck with beds. They're either eating him or he wakes up and there's poop in it.
Yeah.
So, Johnny Depp, get a new mattress.
Or he's poking holes in water.
Yeah.
Instead.
I know. It's just never good. It's never good. He is bad with beds. That is our Boomer Doomer lightning round. Hats off
those
to
parents are pretty bad, you
listen,
guys.
just the laissez-faire attitude. It might be hard for our younger listeners to understand because parenting these days has become very involved.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was go outside and don't come back until the streetlights turn on, and classic advice like that.
Yeah, if you're a younger listener, just think about the films that we'll see in the next 10 years, 15 years of parents literally smothering their kids to death.
That'll be the next trend, right? Helicopter parenting horror, and I am all here for it. Now, listen, I know that we definitely had some fun this episode. We're talking about fictitious people who are written specifically to be terrible. We're not talking about real folks, and this is all in good fun. And like I said, we're definitely going to be doing an episode of the heroic parents part because there are some dope moms and dads out there that are saving the day. But there are also some real shitty ones, and that's what this was about.
Yeah.
We hope you had fun and know that it's all from a place of kind of love.
Just in time for Easter.
Ah, yes. My favorite zombie holiday.
Oh, right. Zombie episode would have been good. But listen, for all of those that are parents out there, we know how hard of a job it is.
Sometimes you got to murder just to blow some steam off. We're not trying to judge.
No, please don't murder anyone. But we really appreciate all your hard work. We love the parents that have done the best jobs they can.
Absolutely.
And to those worst parents out there,
go fuck yourselves.
Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Hispanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're still